What's going on, everybody? This is Joey of Underage Packers, welcoming you to episode 43. Now, usually I'd be introducing myself as a host for the past few weeks, but today I'm back in my role as an honored co-host because the one and only Big B is back to join me. How are you doing, Big B?
Pretty good.
You know, I mean, even before your great news, that was your answer all the time. So I guess,
Yeah.
not too much has changed. And I mean, before we get too far into it, I really do just want to say, I like what Andy Herman had to say in his message too. I really feel that you really are. It sucks that what you had to go through, but I think,
Still going through it, by the way.
yeah. So
Not over yet.
not over yet, but just still, just how much you've shown, and just how kind you are to people. I mean, like, even when you're caring about what I'm going through, it's just awesome. And I think, I don't know anything about life, but hopefully it teaches you a lot about the future, and hope turns you into develops you into more of a character.
Yeah.
So,
Feel like
Big B, I'm so excited to have you back. I'm also really excited for our guest this week, Jacob Westendorf from Game On, Wisconsin. How are you feeling today?
Oh, it's good to be here. I haven't been through what Big B's been through, but I've been through what you're currently going through, Joey. So,
Yeah.
yeah, got my little COVID stint done, and thankfully I'm back up and running as much as I can. Chasing around a toddler is definitely exhausting, and even more so
Mhm.
when your lungs aren't at full capacity. But
Yeah.
yeah, I am. I'm actually still working. So, you guys caught me at one of those days. I work in a skilled nursing facility, and we are actually dealing with some COVID stuff too. So thankfully, I
Mm,
was able to get away for a little bit and come hang out with
yeah.
you guys. The future of the Packers beat. So it's an honor to be here.
We appreciate that. I mean, it's not as bad. I mean, Big B last year was literally going into his school's bathroom reporting news from training camp. So, I won't
Beast.
get on you too much for that. So obviously today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Eagles game this Sunday. Should be an interesting one. But before we get into any of that, let's talk about the exciting signing Packers made this past Monday with kick returner, punt returner, whatever you want to call him, Tavon Austin. I'm really excited for this. I talked about it a little bit on last week's episode. I mean, obviously, he's going to be labeled as wide receiver. He's more so going to be on special teams. But Big B, I want to hear your thoughts first. What are your thoughts on, I mean, just how quickly will we see Tavon Austin? Will we see any of him have a role on offense, or will he just be limited to some punt returns?
Okay. I think he's not going to get much playing time. He's going to stay behind MVS. It's going to be Adams, Lazard, MVS.
Mm-hmm.
But he'll probably get worked into the offense a little more with
Yeah.
Irvin. Might take his spot, but I'm really excited for him on punt returns, kick returns. I feel like he can bring that juice to the special teams.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Just on special teams, bring in the juice. I mean, I'm not sure if this is what you meant by this, but it just feels like there's a lot on this team, defense and special teams, where it's like, what are we even doing here? Do we know what we're doing? Do we want to be playing this football game? And then on the offense side of things, I don't see him too much as a wide receiver at all. The only way I can see him getting involved in the offense is that Tyler Irvin role, like you mentioned. So, Jacob, do you think, based on what Tavon can do, how quickly and how efficiently can he be used in that kind of wide receiver sweep and jet motion guy?
Yeah, it's been interesting listening to Rogers talked about it with McAfee. Adrian Amos talked about it in his media availability. Jamal Williams talked about it with us and Jimmy. Just how excited they are about a small signing
Mm-hmm.
on the margins and how they feel about this guy. Like Adrian Amos said, this guy was the best player in high school in West Virginia. And that was hilarious for me to hear just because I remember Tavon Austin got drafted when I was in college. So this was one of the first drafts that I really, really scouted. And one of my friends that like the first podcast I ever did, he loved him and wanted the Packers so badly to get him. But I look forward to seeing him in that. Tyler Irvin is one of those guys that you don't realize how valuable he is until he's not available, because
Yeah.
then now, especially with the absence of A.J. Dillon, the Packers really only have 2 backs on their roster that they really, really trust. So putting somebody like Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams in that fly sweep role, it's hard for them to, because then they're both on the field at the same time. And now you're asking both of them to play, 80% of snaps instead of, that this week they had a perfect 50-50 split in terms of carries, which I thought was interesting. So I look forward to seeing how they're able to incorporate him on offense. I am most excited to see him. The Packers haven't had a good punt returner since Randall Cobb in his prime, Micah Hyde, obviously. I mean, last year, and this is nothing against Swerve, he's obviously done some good stuff, but the threshold and the bar last year was set so low that it was literally run forward.
Yeah.
Can you just gain positive yards on a punt return? And we thought he was the greatest returner ever.
Yeah, there was definitely some rough stints on punts last year, and thank God Sean Meninga should be thanking his lucky stars for the Tyler Irvin signing. And, maybe Tavon will be like that for him on the stretch. Really excited to hopefully have Irvin back in the coming weeks. But, yeah, we've really, ever since Irvin got hurt, which has really gone by pretty quick, but it's been quite a few weeks here on now, we've lacked that motion guy, and we've tried a lot of different guys in there. But I think Tavon is really would be the perfect fit in that scenario. So on other news, Chris Barnes was promoted from the COVID list. We're still waiting on A.J. Dillon. And then, so talking about Chris Barnes, he was one of the surprises of this season. So, and there after that Bears game, a pretty bad performance from Kirsten Kirksey. There's a lot of people, especially now, that are talking, Chris Barnes and Kamal Martin have done some really good stuff in here as rookies, late round draft pick, undrafted. So how quickly, or is there a point this season where Chris Barnes and Kamal Martin are getting more or really taking over for Christian Kirksey? What would you say, Jacob?
I have a hard time seeing that happen. One of the benefits to the Christian Kirksey signing, and Mike Patton talked about it after they signed him, was his ability to just come in and know the defense and immediately from scratch know exactly what he's doing, where to be, what to do. And you've noticed, too, being a young player on this team, I've talked about this a lot the last couple of weeks, but the Packers, they have one rookie who has stepped in and been a day one starter. That was Darnell Savage. Elton Jenkins and Jair Alexander became contributors very, very quickly. They bring their young guys along slowly, unless they're just stars like Jair Alexander. And nobody's going to say, I don't think, that Kamal Martin or Chris Barnes have been stars at that linebacker position. They've been solid and probably better by comparison because we've been used to watching the likes of, like, with no disrespect to these guys, but like Sam Barrington and Jamari Lattimore and some of the legends that have come through that. It's not exactly Dick Butkus and Mike Singletary and some of the guys that have come through maybe from our rivals to the south, if you will, on that. But I wondered aloud a little bit after Kirksey got hurt as well as Barnes was played, could he maybe get Wally pipped, which is lose your spot because of an injury? But I don't think so. He did play well against Jacksonville. He did play well against Indianapolis, I thought, but he did have a really rough game against the Bears. I still don't know on that first run play to David Montgomery. I have no idea what he was doing. I don't know what his read key was. I don't know if he was it looked like to me on second glance that Zadarius Smith and Kirksey both followed the quarterback. So maybe he got tricked and thought Trubisky had the ball, but otherwise I have no idea what he was doing. So, but one rough game, I think is it's going to be a rough go, but I mean, they're not going to replace him, I don't think.
Yeah, I think especially at middle linebacker where there needs to be, I mean, even if Christian Kirksey's plays in top notch, if he's adding that veteran leadership, that's so important at that commander position over the middle of the defense. Keeping on topic of Mike Pettin's defense, I noticed last year, and something I've been picking up on over this season, is how much his first 2 years in Green Bay, Mike Pettin ran a lot of cornerback blitzes with his two safeties as well. Just a lot of guys coming in from the secondary and adding the extra speedy guy on the line. This year, we haven't seen that as much. I think the biggest thing I would point to is the fact that maybe as the years pass, he was overcompensating a little bit, and he didn't feel as confident maybe in his other corners and other guys in the secondary, so he wanted to get more of a coverage sack or just put pressure on the quarterback in a faster way. So would that help? Do you think we need that extra pressure, and could that be a solution to that?
Well, we're going up against Carson Wentz, who's got sacked about 4,000 times this year. So, yeah, bring as much pressure as you want. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
If you bring pressure, I feel like we can get home every time.
Yeah, for this week, you could look at that, and we'll see what he does. And I mean, just we'll see how much he uses it. I just haven't seen any of it all year when that was seemed like a main point of his offense, especially last year, or his defense rather, especially last year. So let's talk a little bit about the Eagles now. Some practice news coming out of there. Fletcher Cox missed in the past 2 days. Zach Ertz, a limited participant the past 2 days. Those would be two really big injuries, especially Fletcher Cox. The Packers got lucky with Akeem Hicks for the Bears being out this past week. So if Fletcher Cox is out, I mean, that's a really main stake of their defense. And the Packers were able to completely expose that with Chicago just sending up Aaron Jones up the middle and getting 10 or 12 yards every carry. So, Jacob, do you think the game plan for the Packers changes that much going up against the Eagles defense with or without Fletcher Cox?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Fletcher Cox is Philadelphia's best player, and he has been for 4 or 5 years. He was the best player on that Super Bowl team. I got to see that defense up close a couple different times that year. They were the best defensive line in football. They were the best offensive line in football that year. And, Big B just kind of mentioned that Carson gets sacked, feels like every other play now. It's been a big reason for their decline. But something they mentioned on the broadcast during the Bears game, Tony Dungy pointed out that there are runs that if Akeem Hicks is in the game, Matt LaFleur scratches them off of his play sheet. And it's the same way with Fletcher Cox. And there's interior pressure that exists if Fletcher Cox plays versus if he doesn't. With all due respect to guys like John Runyon and Big Elg and Lucas Patrick, who have played well this year, Fletcher Cox is a different animal. And that's like there's Aaron Donald. And then after that, you can definitely make an argument for Fletcher Cox as being the best player at that position. So if he can't go, that's a massive loss for an Eagles defense that's pretty good. The Eagles defense actually is probably better with Cox in the lineup than the Bears defense they faced on Sunday without Akeem Hicks. So they've got a really good group. I don't know. I fall in love with the Eagles roster every single year. I picked them to win the Super Bowl last year. I picked them to go like 12-4 or something stupid like that this year, and they disappoint me every year. So I got to stop picking NFC East teams to do well for some stupid reason. I do it every year.
Yeah, and that will be interesting how they go after the Eagles defense. I don't know. I mean, they clearly kept them in a close distance, at least with Seattle. This past week in Seattle, their defense isn't too good either. I would say the Packers and Mike Penn are a little bit better than Ken Norton Jr. and company. But
a lot of bit better. Seattle's defense is horrible.
Be a little bit more grateful for that. Moving over to the Packers offense, a big thing that I've been hating on all year is this idea, the statement, especially after week 6 against Tampa Bay, a Super Bowl team doesn't do X or a Super Bowl team does Y. I absolutely hate that statement because all a Super Bowl team has to do is get into the dance and win 4 games or 3 games. And I'll tell you one thing that a championship team does do that the 2020 Packers have done phenomenally. They don't rely on their big star players solely. They've had a lot of great role players, if you will, a lot of fifth guy off the bench, if we're talking NBA terms, a lot of those smaller role guys that have stepped in and they're done their job perfectly, done exactly what they're expected to do. A lot that just line off the page. Robert Tonyan, Equanimeous St. Brown, Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Mercedes Lewis. And not that he's a role player. I mean, we are probably 0-16 without this guy, Jamal Williams, Lucas Patrick. I mean, there has just been a lot of great guys that have filled in and done their roles perfectly. So, Big B, would you say that was what was missing for the Packers last year and what ultimately came to their heartbreaking demise in the NFC Championship game?
Well, I think it's the defense about the NFC Championship. I don't think there's much that
Yeah.
offense change there. But I just feel like everyone is stepping up when they have to this year.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like EQ, he stepped up had a pretty solid game.
Mm-hmm.
Got Jamal Williams coming in, carrying the ball. The GOAT. All right, that touchdown was amazing, by the way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
that was,
making business decisions against Jamal Williams.
Oh yeah, I mean there was Big B. I'm not lying when I say he will listen to every episode where he's not there, and he will tell me everything wrong I said about Jamal Williams this past week. I wasn't quote unquote hyped enough about Jamal's.
I didn't even watch it, and I knew you weren't hype enough. Like I just knew, because I would have went on a 5-minute tangent of how awesome that touchdown was. I would just went off.
And that's why you're back.
1 minute and said,
you probably would have never returned if I wasn't bringing enough hype for Jamal Williams. But yeah, I mean you're probably right there. You can't really look at too much besides the defense and Dean Lowry and Tyler Lancaster in the NFC Championship game. But yeah, I really think that's a big difference in this 2020 team. Jacob, looking at the other NFC competitors, which is a wide open field as of now, do you think there's any other team that is putting together more of a complete team than the Packers right now?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing that was missing last year was the Packers didn't have an elite. The teams that win championships have an elite side of the ball or an elite, and sometimes it's rare that you guys weren't living when this happened, and I was barely, but the 96 Packers, number one offense, number one defense, number one special teams, that's the greatest team of all time that nobody talks about enough. The 2010 Packers, they had an elite offense. They just stumbled over themselves all year, and they had a really, really good defense that year as well. You mentioned that Super Bowl teams don't do X, Super Bowl teams don't do Y. That 2010 Packers team, they lost back-to-back overtime games to two teams that didn't make the playoffs. They lost a road game to the Detroit Lions of all teams. I mean, there was all that going. To answer your question directly about teams in the NFC, I think if New Orleans can get Drew Brees back, and if that game can be in the Superdome, because honestly, I think if that game's at Lambeau Field in the cold, he's going to melt. Yes. And I suppose I should probably use a different adjective because you don't melt in the cold, but
it's going to freeze.
That's a bit of a rough go, but their defense is really good. And I think that's something that's been overlooked, but the Packers put up 30 on them earlier in the year, and the Packers, friend of our program and one of the best in the business, Peter Bukowski, points out that, the Packers have played 6 of 11 of their games against top 10 DVOA defenses, and they average over 30 points against those defenses. They can score against whoever. I think people just get that Bucs game, like you mentioned, Joey, in their head and think, okay, if they play a really good defense, they can't score. That's not true. Yep. The last 2 weeks they scored 30 points against Indianapolis, the number one pass defense in the NFL, with DeForest Buckner, by the way, and didn't even play for a quarter, and they still scored 30 points. So they could score on whoever. They have an elite offense. There's not a team in the NFC playoffs that scares me if I'm a Packers fan, because I've said this a million times. I am sick and tired of hearing what the Packers can't do.
Yep.
I want to hear what the other teams. So, for example, they play Tennessee in 3 weeks. So Green Bay can't stop Derrick Henry. Okay, well, Tennessee can't stop Aaron Rodgers. So let's see. And typically, if those are your disparities, the team that can't stop the quarterback is the one who loses. So I like Green Bay's chances in that game. So I'm for it.
Exactly, and I love that point you bring up about Tennessee. We should have a very special guest for that episode when we preview that game. So make sure you're on the lookout for that. It's not Jamal Williams, but he is
me either, so I'm not sure who it is.
But yeah, that's what me and Big B have been talking about all season, and what we've been wanting to see the Packers do when it's the formula how to win. Don't let defenses run over you. Put 40 on them in the first quarter and make them pass the rest of the game. That's a little bit over realistic, but that's the dream. Speaking about the head man of that offense, not Jamal Williams, the second best player there, Aaron Rodgers. I really feel this is some of the best football we've seen from him in quite a while. I don't know if you can say it's definitely a different playing style than 2014 or 11, 2010, but it's a really a great quarterback. So, Big B, let's hear it. What does Aaron Rodgers have to do stat-wise, big game-wise? What does he need to do to win his third MVP?
Ooh, okay. Okay, Patrick Mahomes going to have to suck for one game. All right?
just
But
one game, please.
just
Compensate
one
for
game.
Tampa Bay.
That's all we need to know. Aaron Rodgers just got to keep balling out. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Got to have a big game versus Tennessee.
Yep.
That's a night game, right?
Yep.
Okay, yep.
2 straight night games in a row there.
Yep. Clinch the division that night. Rodgers wins MVP. We're all happy. Packers go Super Bowl.
Mass hysteria all around. Yeah, I'd love to see it because, like you mentioned, Tennessee would be a big game. And that's what I really wanted to see us do in Tampa Bay. And you can't spend too much time crying over spoiled milk, but it's like, man, that would have been a great game to show Aaron Rodgers what he's made of. So that didn't happen. So these next 6 weeks are going to be big for him. Obviously, all we really want is a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP for Jamal Williams. But, that is what it is. So let's move on to the other side of the ball here, the Eagles' defense. So not too bright for them. Their offense isn't. Their defense is a little bit of a bright spot. Their offense really, their offensive line play is very inconsistent, and it's either bad or below average, which allows Carson Wentz not to do anything from the minimal that he can do. And it's just not that 2018 offense. But the Eagles defense really, taking a look at what they have in their secondary outside of Fletcher Cox and their defensive line, it's Darius Slay. And I don't think or believe there's really anybody else of note in that secondary. So looking back at Devontae Adams' past 2 matches against his former division rival, Darius Slay, 7 receptions and 93 yards and 1 touchdown. His past game last year, it was a big day for Allen Lazard, and he was out that week. So who wins the match this time, Jacob? Because it seems like in recent memory Devontae has won quite a few of them, but new team, can Darius Slay finally put a stop to Devontae Adams' tactics?
Nope. If it comes down to Devontae Adams against anybody, I'm taking Devontae. I think Big B, it might have been you, said he's top 2. He's not 2. And Devontae this season has been the best receiver in all of football. He is phenomenal, and it's been great to watch his rise from that 2015 season where it felt like every time they threw him the ball, it was just like a net negative throughout the whole thing, to now being just a superstar. He's a star in the community. He's great. He's great with the media. He gives us a lot of great answers, kind of allows us in and everything like that. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And Darius Slay, the lasting image I have of Slay versus Adams is 2 years ago. So Mike McCarthy's final season as the head coach, we were in Detroit, and Adams scored a touchdown against Slay, and they were separated by, I can't even get it on the screen, guys. It was a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
That's why I was called Darius Slay, Devontae Adams' son, because it is spread way out. I don't think they can stop him. And then you mentioned the other corners. Avonte Maddox is nothing to write home about. Nickel Roby-Coleman's a nice slot receiver, but whatever. The Packers have found ways to – if you're in the slot, you're probably getting matched up with Devontae Adams. So I just kind of went through all that, right? So today's going to have a big day. I've called my shot that Jay Sternberger is going to catch Aaron's 400th touchdown this weekend, but I think Devontae is going to have a big, big game on Sunday.
I would love to see it, to have Aaron get another milestone week, get his 400th touchdown pass in there. That would be great, especially to I would love to see Jace, because I'm a big fan of him. Would love to see him get more involved in the offense.
It's coming.
So, a very specific piece on the Eagles defense. Sometimes when I'm bored, I like to look back at Big B's Instagram feed and just some of his thoughts. So last time we faced the Philadelphia Eagles, Derek Barnett had a very dirty hit, on Jamal Williams. Now, I'm sure these people that are first-time listeners of our show are probably like, why are they talking about Jamal Williams so much? But Big B, can you tell us, we don't need to know the others, but how high is Derek Barnett on your kill list?
1.
Well, he's number 1.
Oh.
It's not even close.
I hate him.
We'll see if Jamal doesn't forget about that this week.
You better not.
Well, Jamal did say it was water under the bridge and he was fine and it was over with. But
He's
you know,
really
I mean,
lying. That little
well, because
He's
the
right.
last time he said something remotely controversial.
Oh God,
it wasn't even remotely controversial, but of course, you know, it was spun that way.
I got so much shit for that too.
Yeah, it was stupid, and you know how it was. I mean, it was funny how if anybody with a brain realizes he was joking, but unfortunately,
yeah.
people in Massachusetts don't realize what a joke is. And of course, the Packers followed that up with the worst game of the season.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Was that you or Jimmy who spawned that question?
I asked. I was like, what the heck? I was laughing. He laughed, and then it went. He said, "Come on, man," and he said, "I'm pretty sure Aaron knows what fourth down is." And then we kind of laughed about it after that. And then eventually, of course, we find it on ESPN and NFL Network and all these places. And we're like, what is happening? Why is all this going on? And of course, the mute button got a workout on our social media pages that week.
My favorite thing about that blowing up was, it's like CBS Sports showing the clip like it's supposed to be a serious show, and then you see like the name tags Weenie 1, Weenie 2, and it's great content.
You know what's funny is we asked him before the show if he was okay with us putting that, and he said, "Oh yeah, man, that'll be hilarious. Please do that." Because I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. And Jimmy was like, "Yeah, maybe." And then Jamal said, "Do it." So once Jamal says, "Do it," I mean,
oh yeah.
If Jamal tells me to put moron as my name, I put moron as my name. That's just when Jamal Williams tells you to do something, you do it.
Exactly. All right. Let's get some final predictions in here. We don't have any consequences like the Freezer podcast, but Big B, let's hear it. Final score predictions. Or before we do that, who is your key matchup for this game?
All right, we are going with the run game versus the Eagles defensive line.
Mm-hmm. It all comes back to Jamal Williams.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah.
Jamal Williams mostly, Yeah. But yeah, with Cox out, gotta have a big game on the ground again. Had 182 yards versus the Bears. I want to see that again.
Yeah, even if Cox is in, how they respond to that will be a big part of it. I'm gonna go with interceptions versus Carson Wentz. If Packers can do the bare minimum on defense and just get 2 to 3 interceptions, really just one interception in there, I think they should be really good and should be working on offense if they're able to take advantage of that. Jacob, who's your key matchup for this game?
Yeah, I'm going to go the right. If Fletcher Cox plays, I'm going to go the right side of the offensive line against Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. I mentioned this week, Billy Turner's having a great season, but he's still the one that you worry about on the offensive line, obviously. John Runyon might be somebody they try and get Cox matched up against as well, with him likely making his first start. But Lucas Patrick and Billy Turner against Fletcher Cox, those guys can ruin games. Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. They can ruin a game. And if you can't protect your quarterback, all those shiny weapons and receivers and running backs and all that stuff that we talk about, they really don't matter. The game, as much as it's changed over the years, it still starts up front and on the line of scrimmage. And that's what matters ultimately, in my opinion, the most.
All right, let's end it off. We're talking with Jacob Westendorf of Game On Wisconsin. Let's hear a Big B. Final score prediction, Packers versus Eagles. Will the Packers move on to 9-3, and why is it a Packers win by 250?
All right, we're going 41-23. Packers get the dub. Big game, baby. Let's go.
All right, I like that. Pretty much same score as the Bears game. I'll go with 38-17 Packers win. Let's hear it, Jacob.
Yeah, I'll go 38-21. I think the Eagles get some garbage time points. They'll probably go for it. Jalen Hurts will score because that'll annoy me that happened. But I think the Packers have plenty of offense to put up plenty of points. They'll get some turnovers. The Eagles do that a lot. And I'm looking forward to a big game from the pass rush. The Eagles, you mentioned, 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line from the beginning of the season are out. So that matters. That matters a lot. So Z, Preston, Rashawn, Kenny, go get the quarterback.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for it, and hopefully it's no stress, just like this past week. Thanks so much, Jacob, for joining us. Big B, I don't think there's so many people that don't even know you have a podcast anymore. You just have such a big following on Twitter. So I appreciate you being my special guest this week. It was a great honor of mine. Jacob, Where can people find you at?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Jacob Westendorf, and then at Game On WI. That's probably the easiest way to find all the Game On Wisconsin stuff. So I look forward to having you guys hang out with us someday.
All right. I appreciate it. Make sure you stay tuned this Sunday for all the content we have coming out on game day, as well as going to the Game On Wisconsin YouTube channel for all their daily live streams and shows and all that good stuff. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Go Pack, go.